the second part. So for the second half, we'll talk about quality control, and then later on, we'll have the control of microorganism. Okay, so let's continue. Then after this, we'll have a quiz again. Okay, so why is quality control important in the laboratory? So quality control are the procedure or the process that we do in the lab for us to make sure that all our results are accurate, precise, and reproducible, which is very important. So quality control activities that takes place must always be recorded. That is the rule when it comes to quality control. Because activities not recorded are not considered done. Okay? Even if you check for quality control but you do not have any proof that you did it, it cannot be counted. That is the rule in quality control. So that's why proper documentation is very important. Okay? So for a quality control program in the microbiome lab, we have to monitor the following. We have to monitor the temperature. Why? Because microorganisms are temperature sensitive. Okay? We have to make sure that the optimal temperature is being provided to the microorganism for them to grow artificially in vitro. We also have to monitor the equipment. Okay? We have to monitor if the equipment is functioning properly, if it is properly maintained. Because faulty equipment, of course, it can lead to false result. We also have to monitor our culture media. When you say culture media, these are the artificial medium that we use in the lab to propagate microorganisms in vitro. Okay? We have to make sure that the culture media is free from any contaminants and it is still potent and enough to support the growth of microorganisms in vitro. We also have to monitor the reagents for its potency and sterility. We have to monitor the efficiency of the susceptibility testing procedures. And we also have to monitor the competency of our laboratory personnel. So those are the important things that we have to monitor when it comes to quality control in the microbiome lab. Now, when it comes to testing, you have 3 stages of testing. You have the pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical phase. Among the 3 stages, the most critical is of course the pre-analytical phase. When you say pre-analytical, these are the steps that we do prior to testing. Why is it the most critical? For example, you made a mistake when it comes to specimen collection. Okay? So instead of collecting blood on the left arm, you collected blood on the left foot. And we all know that blood on the left foot, that is not a suitable sample for blood culture. That's why you got a negative result. So doon pa lang sa collection, mali na. Diba? Kasi class, kapag blood culture, the appropriate is collect sa upper extremities, sa arms talaga. Kasi nga sa lower extremities, ang tumutubo dyan, mga anaerobic bacteria. Okay? But if you're suspecting aerobic bacteria, you should collect on the upper extremities, sa arms talaga. So doon pa lang sa collection, mali na. That's why, kahit mag-test ka, mali pa rin ang findings mo. Okay? Another example is specimen identification. You're able to misidentify. It means, ano yung misidentify na yan? For example, you labeled specimen A coming from patient A. Instead of writing the name of patient A, nilagay mo doon patient B. So nagkamali ka ng label, nagkamali ka ng pangalan, di ba? Definitely, mali na rin lahat ng gagawin mong test. Okay? You committed an error in the specimen transport. You transported in ice. As I have mentioned earlier, the temperature is very sensitive. Some specimen should be transported at room temperature. Yung iba naman should be maintained at 35 degrees Celsius. Right? Okay. So any error done during the pre-analytical can affect the analytical and the post-analytical. That's why it is the most critical stage. Okay? Now, next is the temperature. So what are the instruments that we have to monitor pagdating sa temperature? Unang-una is the incubator. That's very important. Now, incubators, this is the equipment where we place the artificial culture media in order for the bacteria to grow in vitro. And the temperature of the incubator must be maintained at 35 to 37 degrees Celsius. Sometimes, we can increase the temperature if we're going to culture Pseudomonas. We can increase it up to 42 degrees Celsius. It depends on what we are going to culture. Okay? So temperature is important sa incubator because if you do not reach the optimal temperature, the microorganism will not grow. Okay? Heating black water bath, this is being used in different tests in the laboratory. Refrigerators, this is used to store our chemicals and reagents. And of course, the freezer, this is used to store our stock cultures or what you call or other reagents and chemicals pa na dapat ma-freeze. Okay? Now, before using the thermometer to check the temperature, make sure that the thermometer used is calibrated. How do we know that it is calibrated? We compare the result with the thermometer coming from the NIST or the NBS. That is what you call the standard thermometer. So the rule is if you compare your reading to the standard thermometer, the reading should not deviate by 1 degree Celsius. Because if it deviates by 1 degree Celsius, it means that your thermometer is not efficient. It should be discarded na. Hindi na siya dapat paggamitin. So if the deviation is less than 1, let's say 0.1 lang yung deviation niya, it's okay, acceptable yan. You may still use the thermometer. Okay? So what we do in the lab is that we test the thermometer if it is able to read the following temperature. Is it able to read negative 20, 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, 37, or 56? Okay? And of course, should be able to read 0 degrees as well. Now, so how do we make sure that the thermometer is calibrated? So this is the method for calibration of the thermometer. Okay? So for the thermometer, what we do is that we first place them in an ice bath. Ice bath to lower the temperature to 0. So both of the thermometer that you use in the lab plus the standard thermometer are being tested side by side. It must reach up to 0 first. That is the baseline temperature. And then after 0, you're going to test if you can read 37 degrees Celsius. You're going to place it in a water bath with 37 degrees Celsius of temperature. And then another water bath with 56 degrees Celsius temperature. Both of them must be able to read that. Now, what if there's a deviation in the reading? As you can see here on the example, meron kang difference na 0.1. If it is only 0.1, then it is acceptable. Tulad yan, the real thermometer, the reference thermometer, the reading is 37. However, for your own thermometer, the reading is 36.9. Since you only have 0.1 deviation, then it's okay. You can still accept that. You can still use your thermometer. But if the deviation is different, if it is more than 1, let's say for the standard, the reading is 37, but for your thermometer, the reading is 39. Definitely, you're going to discard your thermometer. Okay? Ibig sabihin, hindi na siya efficient. The calibration failed. Okay? So that's how we calibrate and standardize the thermometer. Okay? So thermometer lang yan, pero napaka-sensitive. Yes, napaka-sensitive talaga. Kasi nga, microorganisms are temperature sensitive. So we have to make sure that we're able to provide them the optimal temperature that they need for them to grow in the laboratory in vitro. Okay? Take note that certificates of calibration should be kept. So, nga nasabi ko kanina, whatever things you do in the lab for quality control, it should be properly documented. You may create certificate of calibration or calibration records. Okay? Now, in the laboratory, we don't use the mercury thermometer now because mercury is toxic. So we replace that with the non-toxic mineral spirits, red dye alcohol. This is used in place of the mercury. Now, sometimes the thermometer, they can have bubbles or gas bubbles. So what do we do? If the thermometer has gas bubbles, the reading will be increased. Tataas yung reading. Okay? That's why we need to centrifuge this to remove the gas bubbles. After centrifugation, you're going to calibrate again. Kapag pasok yung reading mo, then continue using it. However, if the calibration is not acceptable, then discard the thermometer and just get a new one. Okay? Next is equipment quality control. So for the equipment, we perform what they call preventive maintenance. What is the purpose of preventive maintenance, class? Now, when you say preventive maintenance, these are the steps that you do in the equipment in order for you to avoid the equipment from breaking, okay, from breaking down or from deterioration. Okay? So what do you do for your equipment? You clean it, you clean, you oil, you replace the filters, and you recalibrate it. All of those steps are essential to make sure that the equipment will not deteriorate and the equipment will not break down. Okay? That's why you need to perform preventive maintenance. And the preventive maintenance in the laboratory, it has a certain schedule. Hindi siya class sabay-sabay ginagawa. Yung iba dyan daily, yung iba once a year, yung iba naman every a few months, di ba? Example is the incubator. For the incubator, you really have to check the temperature and the gas content. Okay, so if you're using the anaerobic incubator, then you have to check the gases, yung kanyang CO2 content and other gas content. Of course, the temperature. All of that is being checked daily. For the gas pack, you have to check the anaerobiosis, meaning you have to check if it is able to achieve anaerobic condition. That's why you have there the indicator, right? You have the indicator, which is the method in blue or the resveratrol. So you do that every time you use it. For the anaerobic chamber, again, you check for anaerobiosis. So check the indicator and also the gases. Check for the humidity and the temperature every time daily. This is daily monitoring. For the biohazard naman class, it is only being checked once a year or if you move it from one place to another. You check for the airflow. It should go down the air plenum and it should go up to the HEPA filter. For the centrifuge naman, you check the speed or what you call the RPM or revolutions per minute. This is being done every 6 months. For the microscope, you clean and adjust it 4 times a year or as needed. For the autoclave, you check the temperature every time you use it. You check for spore testing each week. Okay? Once a week, you test if it is able to kill spores. For the balance, you check for the accuracy of the weights. This is being done annually. So this is the important schedule or frequency of equipment testing for preventive maintenance. And again, as I've mentioned earlier, the preventive maintenance or the quality control does not exist if you did not record it. So whatever you did in the laboratory for quality control, you have to record it. For example here, for the pH meter, you cleaned it, you replaced the water, you check for the silver chloride. So you have to record the date, when did you do it, and who is the one who did it. Okay? Everything should be documented and recorded. You include the date and who is the one who did it. Next is the media quality control. So for the culture media, again, these are the artificial culture media that we use in the laboratory to propagate those microorganisms in vitro. Okay? So for the culture media, again, you have to perform quality control. And quality control records are being kept for at least 2 years. That is the standard in the laboratory according to CLSI. Now, culture media that is prepared in-house are required to be quality controlled. When you say prepared in-house, these are culture media that you are the one who prepared it. Kaya tinawag na prepared in-house. However, class, if the culture media is commercially prepared, when you say commercially prepared, this is now the plated culture media that arrived. Okay? So dumating siya sa'yo, naka-plate na siya, nakalagay na siya sa Petri dish. Those are the commercially prepared culture media. If you're using that, then there is no need to perform quality control testing, no need to retest it because the manufacturer already performed the quality control. The certificate of quality control is already present in the package insert. That's why if it is commercially prepared plated media, there is no need to retest it for quality control. However, class, you still have to observe the overall appearance of the culture media because the appearance can tell you if it has what they call manufacturer's defect. Okay? Kasi kahit commercially prepared yan, possible na meron siyang manufacturer's defect. So you have to check for the moisture. For the moisture, check if it is free of any moisture. Why? Because presence of moisture, that can lead to contamination. Okay? Also, if there is no moisture at all, there is drying, it means that the culture media is already expired or it is near expiration. Okay? For the sterility naman, class, it must not have any contaminants or any bacteria growing on it. So if you see that there is already visible colonies on the culture medium without even opening it, then discard it. Ibig sabihin, it failed the sterility. Okay? For the breakage, definitely, any breakage, any signs of tear, any proof na nabuksan siya, di ba? Or crack. That can lead to contamination. It means that sterility has been compromised. So do not use it anymore. Also check for the overall appearance. Is the color normal? Is there a discoloration? Abnormal smell? Any sign of deterioration? Then do not use it anymore. Okay? Probably there is a manufacturer's defect. Okay? Now, what if you prepare? So even though that is commercially prepared, you still have to record the following that you did. You check for the moisture, sterility, appearance, and the breakage. So, recorded pa rin siya dapat. Okay? How about for the in-house prepared? Sabi ko nga kanina, when you say in-house prepared, these are the culture media that you prepared in the laboratory. This culture medium can be complex, and then it needs several preparation steps. That's why you did it in the lab. Okay? So, if you did that, then all culture media must be tested. All in-house prepared must be tested before use. And what are the things you're going to test? First, you're going to test for the potency of the culture media. When you say potency, is it effective? Is it able to support the growth of the preferred microorganism? For example, how do you check for the potency? First, you have to culture the microorganism or the bacteria that is expected to give a positive result or positive reaction. Meaning, you're going to culture the bacteria expected to grow on that culture media. Next is that you're going to culture another bacteria that is not expected to grow on that culture medium. For example, you're going to prepare the mannitol salt agar, which is a culture medium for Staphylococcus. So you're going to test Staphylococcus. Staphylococcus must grow on that culture medium. However, you still have to test other bacteria such as E. coli. E. coli must not grow on that culture medium. Siya dapat yung mag-give ng negative result. Okay? And then, you must also culture the most fastidious organism on that culture medium. When you say most fastidious, this is the bacteria that is very difficult to culture. But if it can grow on that culture medium, it means that it is really potent and effective. Okay? Besides that, you should also check for the pH by using a pH meter. Also, the sterility. How do you check for the sterility? What you do is, you place an empty prepared culture media inside the incubator. Okay? And then the following day, you're going to check for the presence of bacterial growth. If it is sterile, it should not have any bacterial growth. Kasi nga sterile siya. But if the following day you saw colonies growing on that agar, even though you did not put any bacteria or any specimen on that, it means your preparation is not sterile. It means it failed the sterility test. So do not use that culture medium. Okay? Another one is, if you're going to test and then you're going to prepare primary plating media. When you say primary plating media, these are your blood agar, chocolate agar, and your McConkey agar. Okay? If you're going to prepare that, then the organism to be tested should be diluted. Why? Because you want to make sure that you're able to quantify it properly. Okay? However, class, if you're going to prepare a biochemical culture media, the organism to be tested should not be diluted. It should be pure so that you'll be able to see the maximum reaction. Okay? Now, expiration date should be established. Hanggang kailan expiration date ng prepared in-house culture media? It should be at least within 2 weeks. That is the requirement. Next is the reagent quality control. Now, reagents are being tested. Bakit? Of course, for its potency and also for its sterility. We have to check that. Okay? So how do you check for the potency of the reagent or the effectiveness of the reagent then? Now, what we do is, we check for the positive and the negative control. When you say positive control, you're going to test the reagent against a bacteria that will give a positive reaction. For example, catalase test. Catalase will always give positive sa Staphylococcus. That's why, as a positive control, I'm going to test the catalase reagent against Staphylococcus. It should have a positive result. Okay? And also test it against a negative control. As we all know, Streptococcus will give negative result on the catalase test. That's why I'm going to test the catalase against Streptococcus as the negative control. The result should be negative. Okay? So that's how you check for the reagent quality control in terms of the potency. Next is that you have to check for the sterility, because reagents that are being opened and used frequently might become contaminated, such as reagents with protein, such as albumin. So you have to check daily for sterility. And how do you check for sterility? Physical observation can be used. Just take a look at the reagent and then see if it has a change in color or even turbidity. Okay? Besides the physical examination, you can also get a sample and then culture it on the artificial culture medium. If an organism grows on the culture medium, definitely it is contaminated. Hindi na siya sterile. Okay? So there are two ways. You can expect it visually. Inspect the reagent visually. If you see any signs of discoloration or any signs of turbidity indicating bacterial growth, then stop using it. Possible na contaminated na. Or if it is clear but you're not sure, then you're going to get a small sample, then culture it artificially. And then when you culture it, you incubate, and then the following day, you check for bacterial growth. If it has bacteria, it means that the reagent is already compromised or contaminated. Okay? So, when it comes to stains, for the stains class, we use ATCC strain. So what are ATCC strain? ATCC strain, these are standard strain that we know the expected result. That's why we use ATCC strain when it comes to quality control. Example is, if you want to check if the gram-stain kills still stain, the gram-positive bacteria, the ATCC should be the Staph aureus 25923. And if you want to see if the gram-stain can still stain the gram-negative bacteria, the ATCC should be E. coli ATCC 25922. Okay? Now, next is the susceptibility testing. So for the susceptibility testing class, quality control is very important. We check for the potency of the antibiotic being used, and also we check for the quality of the culture medium being used. Because if the culture medium is not appropriate, and if the antibiotic being used is not appropriate, definitely the results will be not accurate. Hindi siya magiging accurate. Okay? So for the culture medium, we check for the agar depth. Okay? So the depth of the agar should be 20 millimeters. Okay? If it is more than that or less than that, it can lead to false negative and false positive reaction. Pwede siya mag-false susceptibility or false resistance. Okay? That's why the depth of the agar or the thickness of the agar should be standardized. Another one is evaporation. Okay? Meaning, the agar should not be dried. Okay? Should also check for the cation content of the agar, pH of the agar, thymidine content as well. Now, on the part of the automation naman, should check for the automated system if it's still working or not. Okay? Check for the inoculum concentration if it is standardized. Check for the temperature. Check for the moisture. Okay? All of that are very important. Also, when it comes to the potency of the antibiotics being used, you have to check it against ATCC strain. For example, you want to check the gram-negative antibiotics that you're using. You have to check it against the E. coli 25922 because this strain already has expected results. So you must be able to get expected result for you to see that your antibiotic is really working or not. Okay? Same with the other antibiotics. As you can see, with the other antibiotics, we test them against different ATCC strain of bacteria. Okay? Next is personal competency. When you say personal competency, this refers to the proficiency of your medical laboratory scientists. Okay? So you have to verify if your scientists still have the necessary knowledge and skills needed to perform daily laboratory work. So that's when proficiency testing comes in. So what is proficiency testing? This is a routine practice in the laboratory that is being conducted at least twice a year, wherein the supervisor or the lab supervisor is going to provide you an unknown specimen. Then you have to identify and perform different tests on that specimen. Now, your result must be accurate and precise. Okay? So that's one way, okay, the proficiency testing. Now, what if you failed the proficiency test? What are you going to do? Then you have to undergo what they call continuing education, wherein you will undergo trainings, seminars, where you're going to learn new theories, new techniques, present case study, and also have training in using new instrument. All of those are part of the continuing education program. Okay? So if you still fail the proficiency testing, then definitely that can be a sign that you need to be retrained, or maybe you're not suitable for the job at all. Okay? So also part of the monitoring of the laboratory personnel that are having difficulty in passing the proficiency testing is for the laboratorian to be monitored by another laboratorian. Okay? Meaning, someone else will monitor what you are doing in the lab. Okay? Why do you do this? This is for us to see if you're making any mistakes at all. Okay? Because if you make mistakes, then we correct you. We're going to avoid that mistake in the future as well. That's why you need to be checked by your fellow laboratorians. Next is using the stock culture. So what are stock culture? Stock culture, these are bacteria that we keep in the laboratory. We keep that for proficiency testing and also for quality control program. And where do we get this bacteria? We can get this from the patient. We can get this from the commercial source. We can buy this from ATCC. All of this bacterial culture are being kept in the lab for quality control testing program. Okay? Now, most of the time, class, if the quality control check fail, there's a possibility that the reason is the failure of the stock culture. Maybe the stock culture is already contaminated, or maybe the bacteria are already dead. That's why the results of the quality control is not aligned. Okay? So what do you need to do? For the stock culture, you have to maintain it. You have to make sure that the stock culture are always alive. So how do you do it? First, you have to culture that and propagate that in a large volume. Okay? Let's say you're going to culture 100 ml. That is large volume. Okay? And then, from that 100 ml, you're going to transfer portions of that or aliquots of that. Let's say 10 ml of portions of that to small tubes or small vials. Then you're going to keep that inside a freezer. Okay? Now, why do you freeze it? Why do you thaw, or why do you freeze it at all? You freeze it to maintain the viability of the microorganism. Okay? Because if you do not freeze it, the cells will multiply and replicate until they die. Okay? But make sure that if you keep it in a freezer, it must be cultured in what they call artificial culture medium suitable for stock culture. These are the following. You may culture it in Schindler broth with glycerol, skim milk, chopped meat, TSA dip, and the CTA without carbohydrates. These are the preferred culture media to culture the stock cultures. So again, you have first a broth. Yung broth na yan, nandiyan yung propagated mong microorganism. And then, yung propagated na microorganism na yan, maglalagay ka ng portion yan sa mga vial na merong mga culture medium. Let's say you chose the Schindler broth with glycerol. Okay? Maglalagay ka dyan. And then, what you do is you freeze those small vials in the freezer. And then every time you're going to perform quality control, you're only going to get one vial, and then you're going to tow it. When you say tow, tinutunaw siya. And then you're going to revive again the microorganism by subculturing it in artificial culture medium. So you subculture it artificially in order for you to revive it. Once you're able to revive the organism, that's the time that you may now use the organism for culture and also for quality control purposes. Okay? So that's how we maintain the stock culture. Okay? We can keep those vials in the freezer for at least 1 year. That is the viability of the organism in that. Isang taon po ang viability. Okay? Also, the protocol in the lab is that all quality control procedure must be standardized. That's why all of the steps in procedure and process must be standardized and printed in a quality control manual. Now, this manual must be accessible to all laboratorians so that the laboratorians can know what to do whenever we perform quality control. Now, this manual, they can also be revised at least once a year, but it depends on the process in the lab. Because if there is something new in the lab, let's say you purchase new equipment or you change the reagent, you also have to update your quality control manual. That's the time you have to update. But if there's no changes, then definitely there's no need to update the quality control manual. We only update that if we have new reagent, new chemicals, or new machine coming in the laboratory. Okay? And then once na-update siya, it must be signed by the supervisor. So that is for the quality control. Next is control of microorganism. Okay, so we'll have control of microorganism with antibiotic resistance. Okay, so what is essential when it comes to control of microorganism? So first, we have to be familiar when it comes to the terminology. So sterilization and disinfection, these are different, okay? But both of them, they can be achieved through physical or chemical methods. Now, when you say sterilization, it means that all of microorganisms are being destroyed or killed. How can you achieve that? You can achieve that either by exposing the agent exposing the material into chemicals or physical method. Okay, that is sterilization. It means all of the forms of life, all of the microorganisms are destroyed or killed, including the spores. However, when you say disinfection, it means that, yes, microorganisms are eliminated. However, there is still surviving cells. Okay, not all organisms have been eliminated. Some survive, especially those with spores. And you can achieve that by physical or chemical methods as well. So that's why, class, most disinfectants are being used in inanimate objects, meaning surfaces such as tables, chairs, even doorknobs. Okay, dyan ginagamit ang mga disinfectants. Ano example ng disinfectant natin? Okay, example of that is the Clorox. That's the most common example. Okay, next is the antiseptic. Now for the antiseptic naman, class, these are substances applied to the skin that aims to reduce or eliminate those microorganisms. What are example of antiseptic? Example of that is the agoxinada na pinapahid natin sa balat natin kapag may sugat tayo, and also the betadine. Diba? The povidone, iodine, betadine solution. Those are example of antiseptic. Anything you apply on the skin, those are classified as antiseptic. Okay? But antiseptic, they have limitation. They do not kill the spores and cannot be used as disinfectants. They cannot be used interchangeably. That's why, yung ating mga agoxinada, pati yung ating mga betadine, hindi natin ginagamit pang punas sa lamesa. Kasi nga, yan ay para sa balat ng tao, not on inanimate object. Okay? So let's talk about the terminology. So when you say biocide, that means all microorganisms are dead. That refers to an agent that can kill all microorganisms. When you say bacteriostatic, class, that is an agent that can actually inhibit the multiplication. So the bacteria are still there, they are still alive, however, they are not multiplying at all. That's why tinawag siyang bacteriostatic. Okay? When you say bactericidal, yes, it is able to kill those microorganisms. It is the property of a biocide. Okay? The biocide is the agent. The bactericide is the property of the biocide. Okay? Next is sterilization. When you say sterilization, this is a practice of removing all forms of life, including the spores. Okay? That's why all microorganisms are gone. You're going to come up with what they call sterile samples or sterile containers. Okay? Next are disinfectants. Again, these are products or biocides used to kill microorganisms on objects or surfaces. Those are the disinfectants. Example of that is, of course, your Lysol and also your Clorox or the bleach tinatawag. Next is septic. When you say septic, it means that there is a presence of microorganism in a living tissue. Kaya tinawag na sepsis, diba? Kapag sepsis, meron kang bacteria sa blood. If you say septic, it means you have microorganism in your living tissue. When you say antiseptic naman, this is what you use on your skin. Example is your betadine solution and also your hydrogen peroxide. When you say aseptic, these are the techniques that you do to remove microorganism. Okay? The aseptic technique that we did in the laboratory last week. Next is preservation. Now for the preservation naman, class, this means that the microorganism is still there. However, it is not multiplying. Okay? So preservation is usually being used in the pharmaceutical industry, or food industry. Ito yung mga merong tinatawag na preservatives. Now, antibiotics, these are compounds that can either be derived from natural sources, tulad ng mga nanggaling sa halamang gamot, nanggaling sa mga mikrobyo. So, pwedeng magaling siya sa natural sources. Or, pwede naman na synthetic, meaning it is being formulated in the laboratory. And their effect is to kill microorganisms at low concentration. For you to say that the antibiotic is effective, it must be able to inhibit bacterial growth at low concentration. That is the antibiotics. Now, what are the factors that influence the degree of killing of microorganisms? So, isa-isayin natin siya. First is the type of organism and the number of organism. So, type of organism. If the bacteria has spores, definitely. If the bacteria has resistant gene, if it has plasmid, definitely it is much more difficult to treat or kill. So it also depends on the type of organism. If you compare a normal organism without any spore, without any plasmid, without any resistant gene, it is much easier to kill as compared to the ones that has the following. Okay? Also, you have to consider the number of the organism, or what you call the bioburden. So if the bioburden is very high, it is very difficult to eliminate as well. Okay? Also, concentration of your disinfectant. You must be able to achieve the target concentration. Because if the concentration is not enough, let's say it is too diluted or it is too strong, then it will not work again. Example of that is your Clorox. Do not use Clorox in a pure form. Kapag pure yan, it will not work as a disinfectant. Yung kanyang antibacterial property hindi gagana kapag pure yung Clorox. For it to work, you have to add water. Okay? Because the water is going to activate the hypochlorous acid, which is the active compound used to kill microorganism. That's why kailangan ng Clorox ang tubig. Okay? So if the concentration is not enough, let's say the dilution was not met. Instead of just preparing 1%, you're able to prepare 20% or 50%, diba? The water is too much or the water is not enough, definitely, it will not work again. Okay? Next is presence of organic material, such as serum or blood. So if you're going to disinfect with organic material, that is much more difficult because the microorganism, they tend to hide inside the organic material. Okay? They are not found at the surface, but they are inside. That's why, most of the time, it is much better to sterilize this using the moist heat sterilization, which I'm going to show you later. Another one is the surface to be disinfected. If the surface is smooth, it is easy to clean, easy to disinfect. But if the surface is corrugated, it is much more difficult to clean and difficult to disinfect. Another one is the contact time. So for the contact time, that refers to the amount of time needed for the disinfectant to be in contact with the bacteria for it to die. Okay? So example is alcohol and betadine solution. They must be in contact with the skin for at least 1 to 2 minutes for it to be effective. So if you're going to use betadine as a skin disinfectant, you have to wait 1 to 2 minutes before you puncture the skin of the patient. Okay? That is the contact time. Now, different disinfectants, they have different contact time required for them. For the temperature, so generally, all disinfectants work at room temperature. You do not need cold temperature or hot temperature for it to work. And then, of course, the effectivity of the disinfectant can change if you change the temperature as well. If you increase the temperature, it will increase the activity. If you decrease the temperature, it will also decrease the activity. So the temperature can also influence the effect of the disinfectants. Now, for the pH, definitely, it should be compatible with the material being disinfected. So as we all know, class, most of the disinfectants, they have alkaline pH, which is compatible sa mga neutral surfaces that are being disinfected as well. Next are biofilms. So biofilms are community of microorganisms. Sabi ko last time, they form several layers of microorganism or bacteria. And then since they have several layers, they are very difficult to penetrate by normal disinfectants or normal antibiotics. So they form communities of layers of microorganisms that have protective material above them. Okay? So the biofilm is the protective material that covers them and protect them against environmental factors and also against antibiotics as well. For the compatibility, so take note, class, that we don't mix and match disinfectants, okay? We don't mix the alcohol with the Lysol. We don't mix the Clorox with the Lysol, etc. Because the chemical properties, they may negate each other. Okay, they may inactivate each other. So if it is only Clorox, then just use Clorox. Kung Lysol lang yan, then just use Lysol. Do not mix and match. Okay, example of that is the quaternary ammonium compound mixing with the sodium hypochlorite or the bleach. They are not compatible at all. Both of them will negate their effect. Next is the device classification and methods of effective disinfection. So as you can see, class, when it comes to sterilization, the steam sterilization, the dry heat, is very effective. As you can see, class, all microorganisms are being removed or being destroyed, okay? Including the gas, the chemical, and the radiation. Kaya nga tinawag na sterilization, okay? But for the other methods of disinfection, okay, some microorganisms can still survive. Tulad na lang ng mga Clorox yan. Sodium hypochlorite, that is the Clorox. The quaternary ammonium compound, mga sabon yan. Alcohol, phenolics, tsaka iodophore. Yung phenolics, class, ito yung nilalagay sa antibacterial soap. Iodophore, ito yung sa iodine, di ba? Spores can still survive. Okay? Viruses, some are inhibited, some hindi. Kaya nga may positive siya ka negative eh. Kasi may mga na-inhibit, yung iba nabuhay. Okay? But most of them, nabuhay pa rin yung mga viruses. For mycobacteria, buhay pa rin ng mga TB, SARS, Clorox, and also sa phenolics, di ba? Now, for the fungi and tsaka bacteria, yes, it can also be inhibited. Okay? Next is the methods of disinfection and sterilization. So, we have two methods. It can be physical or chemical. Now, for the physical, we employ heat sterilization. For the heat, you have two types. You have the moist heat and also the dry heat. Now, when you say moist heat, this is the application of heat under steam pressure using an autoclave. It means that you're going to subject the microorganism in very extreme condition. The temperature is very high, 121 degrees Celsius, and the pressure is very high, 15 psi. On this condition, microorganisms cannot tolerate this condition. That's why even those with spore will be destroyed. So once you autoclave something, you are sure that it is really sterile because even the spores cannot survive in this extreme condition of 15 psi, that is the pressure, and 121 degrees Celsius, that is the temperature. And you have to expose the microorganism to that condition for 15 minutes. Now, the exposure time, it depends on the load of the autoclave. If the autoclave has few materials inside, 15 minutes is good enough. So kung konti lang ang laman, it's okay, 15 minutes. Pero kung puno ang autoclave mo, you have you filled it up to the brim, diba? Then you have to extend the exposure time up to 30 minutes. We double the exposure time up to 30 minutes. Okay? So this is the method of choice for sterilization of heat-stable objects. This is also good for decontamination purposes. Next is the dry heat. When you say dry heat sterilization, it means you use heat, however, longer is the exposure time. Example of this one is the oven. Okay, so for the oven, we use that to sterilize glassware, but the exposure is about 2 hours. Okay, so this is the preferred exposure time for those different methods for the heat method. So kapag oven, again, this is the dry heat method, diba? The temperature should be 160 to 180, and then the time required for exposure is 1.5 to 3 hours. So approximately 1 hour and a half to 3 hours. So in the middle is 2 hours. Okay. Now for the autoclave, again, the temperature is 121 degrees Celsius. Pressure is 15 psi at 15 minutes. Okay. For the pasteurization naman, class, this is the method that you use to sterilize milk. Kasi class, yung gatas, hindi mo siya pwedeng pakuluan ng 100 degrees. Masisira yung gatas, class. So we only boil that for 63 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. That's how you sterilize the milk. That is pasteurization. Okay? For another method is the flash method, wherein we boil for 72 degrees Celsius but only 15 seconds. Okay? Now for the boiling water. Again, boiling water, it is not that effective. Although yes, it can kill most microorganisms, however, those with spores can still remain. Okay? But if you're going to boil water, you should boil it up to 15 minutes. So, hindi tama yung sasabi nila na mag-boil ka ng 10 minutes. Dapat talaga 15 minutes siya. So that you'll be able to destroy most of the microorganism. However, spores can still survive. Okay? That is the boiling. Okay? So, how about for the radiation? For the radiation class, you have two types. Meron kang ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. Now, for the ionizing radiation, this is being used to sterilize disposables in the laboratory and in the hospital, such as syringes, catheters, and gloves. However, for the non-ionizing, this is used to sterilize surfaces in the laboratory, such as the surface of the biosafety cabinet or the whole laboratory room. You can sterilize table surfaces, okay? Any surface that needs to be sterilized, you're going to use the non-ionizing radiation. Next is the filtration. Now, for the filtration class, this is being used in medicines or intravenous solutions. Let's say antibiotic to be administered intravenously, diba? Because those intravenous solutions, they are made up of chemicals or compounds that are heat sensitive, so you cannot heat them. So what we do to sterilize that before injecting it to the patient is that we perform filtration. So for the filtration, we're going to let the solution pass through a filter with a very small pore size. The pore size is 0.45, 0.25 micrometer, and even 0.01 micrometer. Diyan natin siya pinapag-pass through. So first, we let it pass through doon sa malaking butas muna. 0.80 micrometer and 0.45 micrometer. Okay? That is to remove those big bacteria. Once the big bacteria is being removed, then the smaller bacteria should also be removed. So we use the 0.022 micrometer pore size. So ano yan na, hindi lang isang beses siya filter. Una muna yung 0.80 na filter, and then pangalawa yung 0.45 micrometer na filter. Pangatlo, yung 0.22 micrometer naman ang ginagamit. That is to filter out yung mga medium size or smaller bacteria. This is used to sterilize parenteral solutions. Okay? And then, the last filtration is the 0.01 filter that can actually filter out viruses. Okay? So 0.01 filter, it can filter out viruses. That's why those injectable will now be safe to be injected to you. Again, yung mga ini-inject sa'yo, hindi yan ino-autoclave. Hindi yan iniinit. Okay? It is being filtered. Okay? Now, for the HEPA filter naman, that is the filter that can be found on the biosafety cabinet. Also, sometimes in the facilities of a laboratory with level 4 facility. So, the size of the filter is 0.03 micrometer. That can remove most small microorganism. Okay? Next is, okay, so let's go to the different chemical agent. So for the chemical methods, the first is the alcohol. Now for the alcohol, they kill microorganisms by dehydrating them. Okay? So they're very effective when it comes with if you evaporate it on the surface before you puncture the skin of the patient. Okay? So again, they inactivate microorganism by dehydrating it, and then they denature the proteins of the microorganism. So they remove the water. However, class, they are not sporocidal. So spores can still survive, and they cannot kill most non-envelope viruses. Next is the aldehyde or the formalin. Now, formalin, this is used in aqueous or gas form. However, class, formalin kasi, this can cause irritation, and formalin is also a carcinogen. That's why use of formalin is not being routinely done in the lab. Iniiwasan na siya, class, sa laboratory. Kasi nga, carcinogen siya, and also can cause irritation as well. So, but however, you can use this to sterilize the biosafety cabinet. So, as an alternative sa aldehydes or sa formalin, ano nang ginagamit to sterilize the biosafety cabinet? We actually use only the radiation, okay? Or what you call the non-ionizing radiation. Yun lang ginagamit natin, okay? And of course, we have the HEPA filters. Next is the glutaraldehyde. Now, for the glutaraldehyde, this is another aldehyde that in a 2% solution, it is germicidal in 10 minutes. However, if you extend the time for 3 to 10 hours, it can actually kill spores. So it can eliminate spores if you extend exposure time up to 3 to 10 hours. So they kill microorganisms by inactivating the DNA and RNA through alkylation. And then, this is the best choice if you want to sterilize medical equipment that cannot be autoclaved. So those equipment that are heat sensitive or not stable at all, they can be sterilized using the glyceraldehyde. Phenolics, this is what you add on germicidal soap. So yung mga sabon na antibacterial tulad ng Safeguard, meron sila mga phenolics dyan. Now, that phenolics, they are not sporocidal. They only destroy the cell walls of some bacteria. Now, for the halogen, this is your iodine, diba? So for the iodine, you have two forms. It can be a tincture or iodophore. Now, for the tinctures, when you say tincture, these are iodine plus alcohol solution. When you say iodophore naman class, these are iodine with a polymer. Okay? Example of this one is your betadine that we use in the laboratory. So what is the principle of using the halogen? The halogen, it needs to release what you call the free iodine. So the free iodine that comes from the iodophore or the tincture, once it is being released, it will now degrade the cell wall of the bacteria, cytoplasm, enzymes, and coagulate the chromosome. That can lead to the death of the bacteria. Okay? So the appropriate contact time should be 30 seconds for it to work. However, class, it is non-sporocidal. That's why it is used as an antiseptic or disinfectant. Okay? Now, for the betadine solution, the 5 to 10% solution, this can be used as a topical antiseptic in healthcare personnel hand wash. Meaning, those people, or I mean those surgeon or nurses who's going to come into the operating room, they can wash their hands using the betadine solution prior to performing surgery on the patient. This is being used as a surgical hand scrub. Also as a patient preoperative skin preparation. So ang pasyente, bago siya hiwain, pinupunasan muna siya ng betadine, the 5 to 10% solution. Next is the Clorox or the chlorine. Now for the Clorox class, as we all know class, this is known as the household bleach. Ang tawag sa kanya is liquid sodium hypochlorite. So ideally class, the concentration that is needed to clean surfaces should only be 1%. So you add 1 part of the Clorox in 10 parts of water. That is the best concentration to actually kill microorganisms. Take note that you need water because water, it can actually activate the active compound known as hypochlorous acid that can kill the bacteria. Okay? Now, if you prepare a 1% sodium hypochlorite solution, it should be consumed within 30 days. Because if it is more than 30 days, the potency can be reduced up to 50%. So, hindi na siya gumagana. Okay, habang tumatagal siya, half of the effectivity will be gone. Okay? And then, at least 3 minutes ang ating contact time for the Clorox or sodium hypochlorite. Now, if you're going to clean up blood spill, the concentration must be much more higher. It should give a concentration of 5.25% sodium hypochlorite to clean up blood spills. Next are detergents, yung mga sabon natin, the quaternary ammonium compounds. So for the quaternary ammonium compounds or sabon, these are just surfactants, okay? So they reduce the surface tension of molecules in liquid. That's why microorganisms can be removed through mechanical action, okay? They can also destroy the cells of the bacteria, causing leakage of the cell contents of the bacteria. However, class, most of the bacteria are resistant sa mga sabon, particularly the Pseudomonas aeruginosa. That's why the detergent is only used to clean up bench top and floors. Okay? This is being used for non-critical surfaces tulad ng floor and also ng lamesa natin. Okay? Yun lang ang purpose ng ating mga detergent or quaternary ammonium compounds. Next is dichlorhexidine gluconate. Now for this one, this is an alternative to betadine. Okay? So this is actually much more preferred when it comes to surgery because it has a high affinity to bind to the skin of the patient. So meaning prior to surgery, the patient can be washed, the body of the patient can be washed with dichlorhexidine gluconate prior to surgery and the effect can last up to 6 hours. So instead of using betadine na pinapahid sa pasyente na hiwain, ang pinapahid nila ngayon is dichlorhexidine gluconate. Kasi nga naman, 6 hours ang kanyang effectivity. It is much more longer as compared dun sa betadine natin. Okay? That's why it is the preferred one kapag mag-undergo ng surgery. This can also be used as a alternative to betadine when it comes to surgical hand scrub. Meaning, the doctors, the surgeon, the nurses, they can clean their hands using the chlorhexidine gluconate prior to entering the operating room. It is active at a pH of 5.5 to 7, which is near the pH of our skin. So the concentration should be 0.5% up to 4%. This is effective against gram-positive than gram-negative bacteria and least effective against fungi and tubercle bacilli. Okay? They can also inhibit some viruses, such as lipid viruses and non-envelope viruses. Next is the hexachlorophene. Hexachlorophene class, this is effective against gram-positive bacteria. So a concentration of 3% can inhibit gram-positive bacteria with a contact time of 15 to 30 seconds. However, class, this is not routinely used in the lab because it has toxic effect that can lead to poisoning, that can lead to death. Okay? Kasi nga, class, it can actually cross your skin. It can penetrate your skin, leading to toxicity. Next is the chloroxylenol. For the chloroxylenol, this is effective at 0.5 to 4%. This can act against the microbial cell wall. This is also known as PCMX. Okay? So this can be used again as a surgical hand scrub to surgeons prior to surgery. This can also be used on the skin of the patient that will undergo surgery. So ginagamit siya as patient preoperative skin preparation. Next is the triclosan. For the triclosan class, this was used as part of the antibacterial soap way before. Okay? However, class, they found out that triclosan can be absorbed through the skin. That's why tinigil na sila. Ang nilalagay na ngayon sa mga antibacterial soap, yung mga phenolics na, hindi na triclosan. Okay? Now, for the triclosan, they can destroy the cell wall of the bacteria. They are good against gram-positive and gram-negative and some viruses. However, it can be absorbed in the intact skin. That's why it has been discontinued to be used in antibacterial soap. Next is heavy metals. For the heavy metals class, their action is bacteriostatic and slow bactericidal. Example of this one is the eye drop solution, silver nitrate, being given to babies born from mothers with Neisseria gonorrhea. This is to avoid conjunctival gonococcal or gonococcal conjunctivitis in newborn. Next is the gases. Now, for the gases, you may use the ethylene oxide, hydrogen peroxide, and periacetic acid. However, class, these are not commonly used in the lab. For the ethylene oxide, this is used in sterilizing low-cost thermoplastic products. So, it is mainly used to sterilize yung mga disposable na ginagamit sa ospital. Okay? Yan ang purpose ng mga gases. Next is the mechanism of resistance. How come some bacteria can resist antimicrobial agent? Okay? So, antimicrobial resistance depends on the microorganism. There are some that you call innate factors, the other are acquired factors. Okay? So, let's first talk about antimicrobial agents. As I mentioned earlier, we have antiseptics, antibiotics, preservatives, steriles, and disinfectants. Those are the antimicrobial agents. However, class, not all of those agents can work to kill microorganism because microorganism will tend to fight off those antimicrobial agent for them to survive. Okay? So, in the body, we use a compound known as antibiotics that is being prescribed by the doctor sa mga infected patient. Okay? Antibiotics, they can come from living sources such as penicillin. Penicillin, that is a compound derived from a fungi known as Penicillium. Okay? Besides that example, there are also many antibiotic that has been derived from plant extract and other extract coming from other microorganisms. So it can be naturally derived. However, it can also be synthetically formulated. When you say formulated in the lab, it means that this is made up of different chemical compounds formulated to kill bacteria. So they can be synthetic. Okay? Now, antibiotics, how do they work? They target the following. They can target either the cell wall, stop the replication, stop the production of RNA, stop the protein synthesis. Those are their ways to stop the microorganism. However, class, some bacteria can still be resistant. We have what you call the MDR, or multi-drug resistant microorganism, wherein they're able to fight off the effect of antibiotics. This happens as a consequence of previous exposure to the antibiotics. What does it mean? It means that if you take an antibiotic today, your body, the microorganism in your body will adapt to that antibiotic. So the next time you take it, you will be resistant. Ibig sabihin noon, hindi na mag-work yung antibiotic na yun sa second time. Kasi nga nag-adapt na yung katawan mo na i-resist yung bacteria, yung antibiotic na yan. That's why nagkakaroon ng antibiotic resistance. Now, if the bacteria is resistant to more than one type of antibiotic, okay, or multiple antibiotic, that is what you call the multi-drug resistant bacteria, or the MDR. So, how do antibiotics kill bacteria? First is that they can inhibit the cell wall. Okay, so we have a class of antibiotic known as beta-lactam antibiotic. Example of that are your penicillin and your cephalosporin. What they do is they bind to the protein found in the cell wall of the bacteria, known as the penicillin binding protein. After that, they will now destroy the cell wall of the bacteria. However, class, the bacteria, they can defend themselves against beta-lactam. Some bacteria can resist beta-lactam by producing the beta-lactamase enzyme. So the beta-lactamase enzyme, they will now destroy the penicillin-binding protein where the beta-lactam is attached, that can lead to the survival of the bacteria. Okay? So the beta-lactamase enzyme, they can fight off the effect of the beta-lactam antibiotics. Next is the inhibition of folate synthesis. Now, folate synthesis is very important sa bacteria because that is a pathway for them to create DNA. Okay? So DNA creation, DNA production of the bacteria is being mediated by different enzymes coming from the folate pathway. So they have the different enzymes, dihydropeptide synthase and dihydrofolate reductase. All of this are key enzyme to make sure that the folate pathway is normal sa mga bacteria that can lead them to produce DNA. Okay? Now, however, class, antibiotics can block that from happening. Okay? That's why we have what you call the folate inhibitors. So what are the folate inhibitors? Those are the sulfametosazole and the trimethoprim. For the sulfametosazole, they block the enzyme dihydropeptide. Okay? For the trimethoprim, they block the enzyme dihydrofolate reductase. So kapag block ng enzyme na yon, there's no folate pathway, definitely there's no DNA. Okay? Yan ang magiging effect niya. Okay. Next is interference with DNA replication. Okay? Class, wait lang ha, tumatawag lang si Dean. Sagutin ko lang yung tawag nito. Ayun. So, going back to the DNA replication. So, there are some antibiotic that targets the topoisomerases. Now, topoisomerase enzyme, these are enzymes needed for DNA replication of the bacteria. So, you have topoisomerases 1, 2, 3, and 4. And those antibiotics are known as quinolones. Now, quinolones, they target topoisomerases 2 and topoisomerases 4. How do they do it? What they do is they bind to the topoisomerases. Instead of enzymes binding to the topoisomerases, the antibiotic is the one that will bind to that. Okay? So once binded na, definitely, they will not replicate at all. Nag-stop na ang DNA replication kasi nga nakabind na doon ang mga fluoroquinolones mo. Example of fluoroquinolones is your ciprofloxacin and your levofloxacin. So again, they bind to topoisomerase enzyme to block DNA replication process. Now, antibiotic can also block the RNA production. When you say DNA transcription, that refers to RNA production. It is being mediated by RNA polymerase enzyme. Okay? So, what happens is that, example of that is the rifampin. The rifampin, this is used to treat Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So, they target the RNA polymerase enzyme. Okay? So, they stop the RNA polymerase enzyme so that RNA cannot be produced. If we don't produce RNA, what will happen? Bacteria will not produce protein. Di na siya makakagawa ng protein. Yung kanyang mga metabolic process, cellular process are all inhibited. That can lead to the death of the bacteria. Okay? That's why stopping the RNA production is very important pagdating sa antibiotic action. So example of that is your rifampin, your rifamycin. Okay? Those are the ones that can inhibit the RNA production by stopping the RNA polymerase enzyme. Next is inhibition of protein synthesis. Okay? So, protein synthesis is important sa mga bacteria for them to create their cellular structure. Okay? Also, their different enzyme. So, antibiotic, what they do is that they target ribosomes because in order for the bacteria to produce protein or to perform protein synthesis, the ribosomal subunit of 30S and 50S, they must be able to bind together. That is how the translation process happens. So instead of binding together, these antibiotics such as aminoglycoside, macrolide, streptogramin, they are the one that binds to the ribosome. Okay? So kapag sila nag-bind sa ribosome, inhibited na ang protein synthesis, inhibited na ang translation. Okay? So, antibiotic that target the 30S ribosome is the aminoglycoside, spectinomycin, tetracycline, glycylcycline. The one that target the 50S are the macrolides, lincosamides, chloramphenicol, oxazolidones, and the streptogramins. So what they do is that they bind to those subunits so that translation or protein synthesis is inhibited. Okay? So these are other examples of antibiotic that will bind to the ribosomes. The ketolide, oxazolidinone, and also the linezolid, tigecycline, and even the glycylcyclines. Okay? So what is the mechanism of antibiotic resistance? So meron tayong tinatawag na intrinsic or innate resistance. When you say innate or intrinsic, these are the natural properties of the bacteria that makes them resistant against antibiotics. Okay? So it has something to do with their structure, their cellular process, and their metabolic process, even their resistance. Okay? Now, when you talk about acquired mechanism naman, kapag acquired mechanism, this refers to the change in the genetic makeup of the bacteria that made them resistant. Possible na nagkaroon sila ng mutation, possible nagkaroon sila ng transformation, conjugation, or transduction, or nagkaroon sila ng mga insertion sequences or transposon sa tinatawag. That's why they became mutated and then they became resistant. Okay? Now, the first one, example of intrinsic resistance or the innate is the impermeability property of all gram-negative bacteria. So all gram-negative bacteria, they have a structure known as outer membrane. And in that outer membrane, they have protein or what you call the OMPs. OMPs, these are the outer membrane protein. So meron kang OMPS, OMPF, C, E. Okay? Those proteins are the major channels in the bacteria that actually block the passage of materials in the bacteria. And take note that the outer membrane, they also have the purine channel. Those purine channels are very small. That's why big macromolecules such as antibiotic cannot pass through. That's why they are impermeable. Hindi nakakapasok. Kasi nga, maliliit lang yung butas nila, maliliit lang kanilang mga purine channel, maliliit lang ang kanilang OMPs or outer membrane protein. That's why the large macromolecule antibiotic cannot pass through. Okay? That can lead them to antibiotic resistance. Besides that, they also have the lipopolysaccharide and also the OMPs or the purines or the purine channel na tinatawag nga. Okay? So, the purine channels, again, they naturally serve as the outer membrane channel that permit the influx of nutrients and efflux of waste product. So, if the bacteria was able to be breached with an antibiotic, again, since gram-negative yan, meron pa siyang next layer of protection known as the periplasmic space that can actually produce the enzymes needed to counteract the effect of the antibiotic. Once na neutralize niya ang antibiotic sa kanyang periplasmic space, ilalabas niya ulit yung antibiotic sa kanyang purine channel to pump it out of the cell. Okay? So may tinatawag din siya na efflux pump. So this can lead to MDR pathogen or what you call the multi-drug resistant pathogens. Next is the biofilm. For the biofilm, sabi ko nga kanina, this is highly resistant to antibiotic exposure kasi nga, they form layers of bacterial communities that are embedded deep in a polysaccharide matrix. So they are very difficult to penetrate. Okay? So if the bacteria has biofilm, most of the time, it is multi-drug resistant as well. Okay? Next is the efflux pump. So when you say efflux pump, this is both found in the gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria. This is the ability of the bacteria to produce what they call transporter protein. That transporter protein, they will bind to toxic substances such as antibiotic that was able to penetrate inside the bacteria. Just in case nakapasok si antibiotic sa bacteria, maglalabas naman si bacteria ng transporter protein to bind the antibiotic. And that protein will now extrude out that antibiotic palabas sa environment. So nilalabas niya rin sa environment. Kaya tinawag na efflux pump. Okay? It catches the toxic antibiotic. It will then push out or extrude out the toxic antibiotic. Okay? Towards the external environment. Kaya tinawag siyang efflux pump. So example of that are the Enterococcus faecalis. They can actually extrude out or push out some antibiotics such as oxazolidine and the streptogramine. Next is enzymatic inactivation. So sabi ko nga kanina, bacteria produces different enzymes that can actually inactivate antibiotic. Example of that is the beta-lactamase enzyme. So what they do is that they hydrolyze the beta-lactam ring that is being complex in the penicillin-binding proteins. So sabi ko nga kanina class, those beta-lactams, yung mga penicillin, they bind to proteins found on the surface of the bacteria. Ang tawag sa protein na yun is the penicillin binding protein or the PBPs. Okay? So once nag-bind na sila, the bacteria will now produce the enzyme beta-lactamase to hydrolyze that binding. It will hydrolyze the antibiotic plus the binding to the protein that can actually destroy the antibiotic. That's why nagiging resistant sila. Okay? So most of the gram-negative, they produce beta-lactamase enzyme. That's why most of the gram-negative are resistant to penicillins or beta-lactam antibiotics. So saan lang ba gumagana yung penicillin? Gumagana lang yan sa mga gram-positive. Kasi nga, most of the gram-negative talaga, mayroong beta-lactamase na sumisira sa beta-lactam ring. Kaya hindi effective ang penicillin sa mga gram-negative. Okay? Now, for the gram-positive, they also produce beta-lactamases. However, this is being secreted as an exoenzyme. So the effect is much more slower on the gram-positive. So that's why sometimes penicillin can still work against gram-positive bacteria. Okay? So they offer less protection to the microorganism because exoenzyme is secreted slowly. Next is acquired mechanism. When you say acquired, it means that these are resistance that you get from the environment. Okay? For example, the bacteria undergo transformation. Nakakuha siya ng resistant gene from the environment. Or nakukuha siya ng resistant gene from a virus. Nag-undergo siya ng transduction. Nakakuha siya ng plasmid from conjugation. Nakakuha siya ng resistant gene through mutation. These are the acquired mechanism of resistance. It is not normal, however, it happened because the microorganism have evolved. Okay, the microorganism have evolved in order for them to survive and react against the antibiotic. That's why the antibiotic is no longer effective against this organism. And this also has something to do with their housekeeping gene. When you say housekeeping gene, these are the genes that are activated whenever the bacteria needs to survive. Okay, these are what you call the silent genes. Okay, so that is just the lecture for today. So do you have any questions, class? May tanong po ba? May quiz tayo, ha? So our next quiz is about this one, control of microorganism plus yung quality control. I'll give you time to review. We'll have the quiz by, no oras na ba? So we'll have the quiz by 5:30 p.m. Okay? So please be back by 5:30 p.m. for the quiz about this